Contest sign-up weekend here at Circa Resort and Casino, which means we are so fortunate. We get some floating awesome guests that are in studio alongside Mike Somish, Stormy Bonantoni with you. Jake Asman on the desk with us here, The Jake Asman Show on YouTube, ESPN New York, Sirius XM Radio. You can find this guy pretty much everywhere, which is awesome. And the Jets, a team that everybody wants to talk about. So I'm sure you have been very busy and people have been stopping you a lot upstairs.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like they have one of the most polarizing athletes of all time, playing quarterback for them or something, Yeah,
it's interesting after Zach Wilson's season last year. We talked about the loss of Aaron Rodgers. You have Zach Wilson, also a pretty polarizing athlete when you think about it. Then you have Aaron Rodgers come in. This team on the defensive side of the ball specifically looks like they are ready to take a huge step forward. Massive pass rush on the inside. You've got Sauce Gardner on the outside. What are your expectations from this Jets defense? How good does Aaron Rodgers, the offense, even need to be for this Jets team to succeed?
Yeah, I'm glad you worded it that way, because the way I look at it is, they've had a top 5 defense the last 2 years. They've won 7 games with the last ranked offense in the sport. And objectively speaking, I mean, last year was the worst quarterback room maybe ever put together. The only quarterback I could tell you guys that Zach Wilson is definitively better than is Tim Boyle, who, of course, was their only other option after they finally benched Zach Wilson last year. So, look, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is 81-10 in his career when his defense allows less than 20 points. The last 2 years combined, the Jets defense has allowed under 20 points per game. It's like 19.3, I believe, is the number. So you don't need Aaron Rodgers to be an MVP level player for this team to go from 7-10 to at least 10 or 11 wins, in my opinion. But the big thing for him is, can he stay healthy? They revamped the offensive line. They go out there. They obviously added Mike Williams as another weapon. They draft Malachi Corley. They looked good this summer. Like Olu Fashanu, who they took in the first round, is now backing up Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. So even if you have an injury to one of your veteran tackles, you don't feel like you're screwed like you were last year. So the roster is really good. The defense is elite. And if the offense could just be competent, right? Average to above average, there's no reason why this team can't be competing for the AFC East, is how I personally look at it as a cautiously optimistic Jets fan.
Well, and I think that's like a great way to put it, right? Is cautiously optimistic, because there's so much reason for optimism when you think about what this team is on paper. We've joked on the Lombardi line, Michael Lombardi and I usually, we call them the ifers, because we're like, if everybody stays healthy, if Robert Saleh is the leader that he tries to act like he is, but we haven't seen yet, if all of these things happen, then the Jets could be unbelievable. But do I bet on an if, or do I bet on what I've seen in the past?
Yeah, it's totally fair. I mean, that's why I go back to the fact that, I have questions with the head coach as well, but to be fair to him, there's not a coach in football through the first 3 years that has had a worse quarterback situation than Robert Saleh. He's at least supposed to be a defensive guy. He is built for 2 years straight now a top 5 defense. They never play with leads. They're always on the field. So I just can't even imagine what this team could look like if, instead of being down late where teams aren't going to throw on them, they're just going to run the ball. All of a sudden, you have to try and throw against Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter. You have to worry about the pass rush of Quinnen Williams, Jermaine Johnson. Eventually, I'm assuming Hassan Reddick will show up at some point. You add him to that defense, and you're talking about a defensive line in the secondary, plus 2 all-pro linebackers in C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams. They might be the best defense in the league, getting a chance to finally play with a lead. But, it all comes back to Aaron Rodgers. Like, if you tell me he plays 14 or 15 games, I think if you're a Jet fan, you sign for that right now. You got a legit backup in Tyrod Taylor. You can go 2-1 with Tyrod over a 3-game stretch. So I think, like, the ceiling for the Jets is they could be one of the best teams in the league, but the floor needs to be, if you're a 7-win team the last 2 years, you have to at least be a playoff team, at least be a 10-win team and get in as a wildcard team at the bare minimum. Otherwise, you bring up Robert Saleh, he won't be here next year. Joe Douglas, their GM, he won't be here next year. So, like, they have to get it done this year, because if not now, then when?
Yeah, Jeff Hackett also on that list. He will not be back if they don't get the job done here. And Stormy, you mentioned kind of the Jets are a team of ifs. It feels like this whole division is a division of ifs in a lot of ways. You've got the Miami Dolphins. You've got this prolific offense on one side, but they've got to go outside later in the year. That's a big question mark for them. Both the defensive ends that were big-time pass rushers last year coming off Achilles and ACL injuries, that's a big question mark. The Bills, who've been the dominant team inside this division, I mean, I might be able to be their third wide receiver at this point. Their defense getting gutted in a lot of ways, that specifically the safety position going to be a big question mark for them. When you're talking about the Jets, who now are the co-favorite with the Bills to win the division and have the highest win total right now, what do you make of the Dolphins and the Bills? We're not going to bring up the Patriots. I think we can all agree they're probably 4th place in this division.
Oh, do I love saying that.
They
stink.
Yeah, they're the longest long shot in any division right now. Like, what a change of fate for New England.
It brings tears of joy. I'm thrilled.
It might not just be this year, too. It might be a little while before the Patriots are good again. But what do you make of the rest of the division and the Bills and the Dolphins, the teams that are going to try and I guess, chase down the Jets now since they have the highest win total and are the favorite.
Yeah, it is wild that the Jets have now become the favorites in this. But if you think about it, just from a talent standpoint, like what I try to do is like just look at the roster, right? You remove Jets from the helmet, and I think the Jets are the most talented team in the AFC East. Obviously, they have a huge question mark with Aaron coming off this injury. How many games is he going to go out there and play? But you look at the rest of the division. Buffalo's already without Milano for the season. That is a huge blow to their defense. They obviously had a lot of changes in the offseason, losing Diggs and basically all their other key players, it feels like, on defense. You made the joke about their receiver room, but that is a huge question mark right now for them. And then Miami, look, they're a really good football team, but the fact of the matter is they were 1-5 against teams with a winning record last year. The first time Tua wins a game when the temperature is below 45 degrees would be the first time he's ever done it. You look at the schedule, they play the Jets at the Jets in January, last game of the season. If that decides the AFC East, that's advantage Jets because of the cold weather factor. So, if the Jets have done nothing other than, hey, Aaron Rodgers is back, I think they're a better team than they, of course, were with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. Now you talk about all the other additions they made and the fact that I don't believe Buffalo and Miami, if anything, they either stayed the same or got worse. I think it's set up for the Jets if, once again, we go back to the health question and you guys talk about the if.
Yeah.
If some of those ifs become sure things for this team, I'd pick them to win the division, but I'm also not going to sit here and kill anyone who says, I'm taking Josh Allen on the Bills because best quarterback. He's proved it. They won the division 4 years in a row. So to me, if I'm betting on it, I'm either taking the Jets or I'm taking the Bills. I'm not a big Miami guy.
Yeah, if is our favorite word, I feel like, for sure. But it is weird, like you said, to see them being co-favorite at plus 180 with the Bills atop this division. Their win total's 10.5 when they haven't won more than 7 since 2015. And it's, it's just the conceptual side of it.
They haven't won the division since 2002. Herm Edwards was the coach. Chad Pennington was the quarterback. That's like me at the start of my Jet fandom thinking, this is awesome. We're going to the playoffs every year, and they haven't won the division title since.
Okay, so you are here, like we said off the top, this is contest sign-up weekend. So Radio Row is upstairs. There's lots of different people mixing and mingling. Are you signing up for any of the contests here?
Yes, I will be in the Circa Survivor, and I'm hoping it goes a little better than it did last year. We got bounced in week 3 last year. Remember the Cowboys got off to that incredible start. They destroyed Daniel Jones and the Giants week 1. I went to Dallas week 2 to watch. I was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers versus Dak and ended up being Zach Wilson versus Dak. So the Jets get pummeled that game, and everyone's like, wow, the Cowboys are great. They go to Arizona, who at the time everyone's like, well, they're going to be the worst team in the league. And Josh Dobbs beats them, and that's how I got bounced out of the Circa Survivor last year.
I feel like everybody has an unbelievable story as to how they lost. It can never be just a simple cut and dry situation.
No, you always made a mistake in some way, and this crazy thing happened, and that's how I got bounced. It's funny because I talk about poker. You always talk about your bad beats. You never talk about your lucky wins. And there are just as many of those lucky wins in Survivor as the bad beats that eliminate people as well. So when you're looking at Survivor this year, have you come up with a strategy? Are you with me here? Just fade the Patriots every single week you can and hope they go 0-17?
Oh, man.
Or are you coming up with something else?
Yeah, I had not thought about that strategy, but that brings a lot of happiness just even thinking about fading the Patriots every week. I'll say this. I'm going to leave it up to my listeners. On my YouTube show, I call them the Asmaniacs. So I'm going to let the Asmaniacs basically decide each week which team we're going to pick because, I'm terrible. I'm supposed to be an expert. I'm not. I'm just a fan. I'm passionate like you guys are, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to let my listeners each week, we'll come up with we'll narrow it down to the 4 teams we're eyeing. We'll vote on it. We're a very, democratic YouTube program.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that the Asmaniacs get the final say on who we're picking each week.
That's a good reminder. Check out the Jake Asman Show on YouTube. You can also catch Jake on ESPN Radio New York, Sirius XM Radio, all of the things. What else do you guys have going on this weekend?
Just honestly enjoying Circa. Every time I get a chance to do a hit with you guys here on VSIN, I'm just I cannot believe this is the office right here. This has got to be one of the best views in all of broadcasting. So I'm just enjoying Circa. We had a lot of fun last night at the kickoff party they did over at the D Hotel, which was great. So any chance that we get to come out here a couple times a year, it's always a blast.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal environment to be able to watch football. Make sure you check out some of the preseason games in here. I was here yesterday during the preseason games. It was still pretty electric, even for the preseason. So you can tell everyone is hungry for football here. We've got college football kicking off shortly as well. Last question for you here. Do you have any big futures you like in the NFL? Any teams you've bet to win the Super Bowl or anyone you're keeping an eye on at a big number?
So I already do have a ticket on the Jets over 9.5, and I just saw, on the latest odds boards, it's now up to 10.5, yeah. So I got really good value on it. And this was a bet I placed when I was here for the draft back in April, so I'm feeling good about that one. Some other bets I like. I was looking at Breece Hall's over-unders, and I think they're really low. This is a guy last year that if you're looking for a player prop guy to look at, this is a guy last year that with 13 different offensive line combinations in 17 games, was still second in the NFL among running backs in yards from scrimmage behind Christian McCaffrey. He had Nate Hackett as his OC. He had the worst quarterback situation, and he still went out there and was unbelievable. I think if you could get Breece Hall's yards or receptions total, just anything Breece Hall, I think he's going to be like the focal point of the offense, especially early on as they work Aaron back in slowly. So anything Breece Hall, any futures on Breece Hall, I'm targeting. I think he's going to have a monster season.
I know we said last question, we only have about 20 seconds left here, but I'm a 49ers fan. How's week 1 going to go?
Man, I know everyone's going to pick you guys, but until I find out what the
We're
deal is.
We're down to 4 on the spread now.
It's going the Jets' way. I mean, the Ayuk situation up there. McCaffrey's calf is up in the air. Trent Williams is still holding out. So, like, if I had to make a pick, I'd pick San Fran, but I think the Jets are a live dog in that game.
Hassan Reddick, never show up. Okay, we don't need it. We don't need to worry about it. Thank you so much, Jake. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys for having me. Big fan of the show. Thanks for allowing me to come on.
Right back. More Lombardi Line coming up after this.
We are inside the Circa Las Vegas ballroom, and joining me right now is a good friend of the show and probably someone you met if you made the trip last November for Jet Raider weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, we bring on Mike Palm, the VP of Operations at Circa. He joins the show. Mike, always great to see you, man. You've been running around like a maniac making this weekend happen.
Well, let's start off with all the trouble you caused us.
Oh, yeah?
Because of that pregame party that Friday night and having 300 people.
Blame Fireman Ed for that. I mean, that's why people were there.
But our social team may be influenced by the fact that their parents are big Jets fans, right? Tweeted like they had 13 tweets of the party or something. And then the Raiders just, they were outraged. They were outraged that Circa supports visiting teams.
Wow.
I mean, it was real. And they're like, screw, we're never going to Circa, these Raider fans. Well, you never came here anyhow. We don't put the volume on the Raiders games. Let's be honest.
Come on now.
Well, when is it the best game of the day? I don't know. Usually you have to have a quarterback to make that happen.
I know that well as a Jet fan, so believe me. I paid good money to watch Zach Wilson versus Aiden O'Connell last year.
How about that game, Jets and Giants? I thought that whoever won the coin flip in overtime should have kicked. You didn't want the ball. You were going to punt from deep in your own end, and the other team needs a field goal.
Well, let me tell you, I was at that game as well. And here's how bad it was last year as a Jet fan, Mike. So last year, the Jets played a Monday night game against the Chargers. They didn't score an offensive touchdown. Then the next week was the game out here against the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't score an offensive touchdown. So I paid good money and traveled to watch the Jets back-to-back games not score an offensive touchdown.
But it'll be better this year, though.
Oh, I mean, if they keep Aaron healthy, remove Jets from the helmet, they have a damn good roster.
So Frank Schwab was going to be on my panel tomorrow, lead NFL writer for Yahoo Sports. He was a regular guest on the show Amal and I had on VSIN. He came on every Wednesday. He was the first guy a couple of years ago to tell me about the Eagles. And then, then the market started to get momentum. And, they went to the Super Bowl and had a 10-point lead before Hurts fumbled there. I thought they were in control of that game. So I said to him, I had him on a couple of weeks ago on a different show on Lombardi Line. And I said, well, who's your Eagles from 2 years ago? He said, I'm all in on the Jets.
Wow.
That's his pick to win the Super Bowl. And he, right. They did address the offensive line. They're good at all three levels of defense. And if Aaron stays healthy, even if he has the last year he had in Green Bay, just take that last year and plug it in. They're supposed to win that division.
Well, you know what it is too, Mike? They won 7 the last 2 years with no quarterback, right? The only quarterback I can tell you, Zach Wilson, is objectively better than is Tim Boyle, who backed him up last year after Aaron got hurt. So, to go from 7 wins with competent quarterback play, you think they're at least a 10 or 11 win team. And if Aaron is anywhere close to still being a top 10 quarterback, which I've seen him in person 5 times this summer, he looks great. You would have no idea this guy is coming off a major injury. To me, there's no reason why they can't be, a Super Bowl contender. Certainly a team that I think can win the AFC East. I don't love what Buffalo and Miami have done this offseason. Buffalo's dealing with no Matt Milano already. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a Jet fan who's just praying to finally get a break. But I really like this team. And they have a legit backup in Tyrod Taylor if, God forbid, Aaron can't play all 17 games.
He was the best Giants quarterback.
He was.
But I don't think that's a debate. He was by far the best Giant. You gave him the best chance to win every game. So, yeah, the AFC East is interesting because, did the window close for Buffalo? I don't know if the window didn't close when they couldn't defend in those 13 seconds against Kansas City, right? They had 4 shots in the fourth quarter last year, and their offense couldn't score. So it's tough. I don't know how they got better. I think their defense is too small, the Bills. I don't know what to make of Miami. I mean, there's a little bit of the Sorcerer's Apprentice down there. I mean, a guy like Vic Fangio leaves and everybody's happy. Why are they so against everybody that's apparent in the room, right? The roster rebels against any kind of structure. And here's the thing about Miami. People bet Miami to win the Super Bowl. I said, so you telling me that either Miami's going to be the 1 seed or Jacksonville's going to be the 1 seed?
Right.
They cannot go to weather.
No.
I'm talking about not northeast weather. They can't go to Baltimore. They can't go to Kansas. Tua cannot play in any weather. So how do you? I don't care if you want to bet their regular season win total, but how can you make a playoff bet on them, a Super Bowl bet?
Hey, great point. And I've said this: the first time Tua wins a game when the temperature's below 45 degrees will be the first time he's ever done it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and if you look at their schedule too,
that's his whole life.
Not
NFL.
College, yeah,
his whole life.
Yeah, that Hawaiian blood, I guess. But you go back to like the Jets' schedule; they end the year hosting the Miami Dolphins in early January. If that game decides the division or a playoff spot, I mean, that's a big advantage for the Jets in that one.
Absolutely. It's very interesting because where does it fall your game with them, right? With your game in Miami. And you can argue that if you play in Miami at that time, it's a double whammy. Like if you were playing that game in Miami in January, because teams in the Northeast aren't used to the humidity that you have to go to. It's tough for them to adjust to that. They'd rather play in the heat in September when it's still hot everywhere. And then in Miami doesn't have to travel to the cold. So you avoid the double whammy there with that game being in New York.
I got a lot of listeners that are in the contest this year, Mike. Of course, we're out here for Circa contest weekend. You got the Circa Survivor, the Circa Millions contest. What's the biggest piece of advice for each contest would you share with my audience?
So for Survivor, I would say you have to start with those 2 special weeks. You can't. People get to Thanksgiving and don't have a team left. I mean, come on. What's the point? So start with those 2 weeks. I would identify at least 2 in each window that you want to save. Then I would go through and I would make a list of, for all 32 teams, and for some there might be a list. It's not a list, it's 0, but where are the best shots where you'd like to use that team during the year? Week this, and then line them all up and say, well, in week 1, I said these were the 3 teams that, I would possibly use, and then try to go through and see, if there's 2 teams you would have used in week 1, well, where's the other spot? And is that week there's somebody else you could use? And, everybody's going to say Cincinnati in week 1 over New England, but do you want to be with everybody? Like, pick your spot. I have 2 other criteria for me. I don't use road teams and I don't use division games. I think division familiarity decreases the variance in skill.
Interesting.
So, like for me in week 1, I would be on the Bears.
Play Titans, right?
Home to Tennessee.
Yep. Tennessee's
got a new coach. The Bears are really, that crowd's going to be nuts. So I see the preseason games. They're acting like it's the playoffs. They're so out of their minds that they actually have a passing offense for the first time in their lives. They're so excited, and they have a legit defense. So I would use them there in that spot. I mean, that line's kept going up from 4 to whatever 5 now, and the support's been to the Bears. But I would take a shot there. Now, if you got multiple injuries, maybe you put one on Cincinnati just in case you're wrong with that pick and you want to move on. But that's that. For millions is a little harder of a question. I say you want to be contrarian, not always, but the most popular picks are going to be the stale lines, where lines move 2 points since we put it out on Thursday morning and out Saturday afternoon, and it's moved 2, so you're going to get 2 points the better of the line. I'd just be careful of doing that because they're always going to be the consensus picks. So you're never separating yourself at any point. Now, you get to an end of a quarter and you're winning, right? And you maybe want to be with the consensus at that point. But that's really the only advice that I would give. The guys that have been successful, follow all the beat writers, get as much information as you can on the injuries. I mean, that's probably the biggest advantage you have. And then just be careful of teams that kind of get overvalued because they're on a hot streak.
Yep.
Right? Like week 2 is always overreaction week, right? Everybody, oh, wow, there's such short sample size. I think being contrarian in week 2 is usually a good thing.
Well, I got knocked out of Survivor. If you remember, Cowboys, they destroyed the Giants week 1.
Yep.
They beat up on the Jets in week 2.
Yep.
Went to that game as well. Saw 1 offensive touchdown, great. And then week 3, everyone's picking them in Survivor on the road against Josh Dobbs and the Cardinals, who were supposed to be the worst team in the league. And the Cowboys lost that game. I got knocked out of the Survivor.
1,100 people, I think, went out on that game. It would have been 4,000, but for the fact they were saving Dallas for Thanksgiving. That's really what. Here's another thing, though, I always say about Tua. He's the great about Dak. They're great front runners. But that game, he was down 10 points and could never get them over the hump. They couldn't convert in the red zone. They're not good when they get behind. And you see that in the playoffs every year. They get down 2 times, they get run out of town.
100%. He's Mike Palm. My name is Jake Asman. Mike, let me get you out of here on this. You have seen the evolution of Circa from the beginning. What are you the most proud about when you think back to where you guys were to where you guys continue to go? Where, I've said it to my audience thousands of times. you guys have built sports heaven for every sports fan.
I'm proud of, how we've evolved. You have a game plan going in, you build the property, and you adjust. Like Derek was convinced that having sports audio on at Stadium Swim 24/7 was the thing. Well, it's, how many people are want to listen to the Rays and the A's on a Thursday morning from the Trop, right? It's still majority is day drinking and DJs, but I mean, college football, NFL Sundays, playoff games, you get the audio, you get that experience, but you adjust to what the customers want as well. So I'm very proud of how from our original game plan, we've adjusted to make it better.
You guys have done a great job. It feels like every time I'm out here, I'm a little kid again, even though it's 21 plus here. So I appreciate you guys having me. Appreciate everything you guys did for the audience last year. Came out to Circa for the Raider game. So I look forward to many more of these, Mike. It's going to be a great football season.
Thanks, Jake, and thanks for all you do for us.
He's Mike Palm. My name is Jake Asman. Quick break. We continue. It's the Jake Asman Show live in Las Vegas.